Chapter 23. Once upon a time, well, actually, it was today, I was sitting in English class. "We can break up writing in various ways," Mr. Franca said, "even though some things aren't meant to be broken. However, the Board of Education wants to make sure you all know certain concepts for testing purposes. So today we'll look at 4 types of prose. You'll be tested on this eventually, and probably endlessly." I sat and listened as he explained about narrative writing. That was one of the most common kinds. It told a story. When Mr. Franca finished that part of the lecture, he paused for a moment, sitting on the edge of the large metal desk that was wedged on a slant in the left corner of the room, beneath the drooping glory of the flag. "Who can name another type of writing?" he asked. I raised my arm and noticed with interest how the dust particles danced in the golden light beam coming through the window. "Yes, Scott?" Mr. Franca said, pointing toward me with a chalk-stained finger. "Descriptive?" I said in a voice that was tinged with both enthusiasm and a slight shadow of uncertainty. "Right," he nodded. "As I mentioned, it's important for you to learn these distinctions. You'll be tested on them. It might not be as much fun as reading novels, but if you don't do well on the tests, it can affect the rest of your education. So I urge you to pay attention. Now, who can name another type of prose?" He called on Julia, who said, "Persuasive?" "Correct." Mr. Franca then fulfilled his role as teacher, which of course required that he inform and educate us. He explained that beyond narrative, descriptive, and persuasive writing, there was another sort. Expository writing laid out facts. "And there you have it," he said, "though you'll never encounter all 4 in the same place." First day of midterms. It was hard to believe that the year was half over. There weren't a lot of kids on the bus Thursday morning. We didn't have to come in until it was time for our tests. That was 3rd period for me, but I didn't want to hike into town, so I took the school bus. Being early wasn't a problem. I just hung out in the library and studied. I didn't even see Wesley drive past the bus stop. Maybe he skipped midterms. The tests weren't all that bad, but I felt kind of fried. I had English, Spanish, and chemistry. Tomorrow I'd have history, life skills, and algebra. But then there'd be a long weekend. We had Monday off for Martin Luther King Day. No basketball games or wrestling meets during midterms either. Naturally, I had a rehearsal scheduled for Monday morning. It was so thoughtful the way Mr. Purchall made sure practice didn't interfere with my schedule. That night, Wayne and Charlie stopped by the house. They're 2 of Bobby's old friends from his band. They'd been up in Boston playing in small clubs. But the 3rd guy in their group had been a real jerk, so they broke up. Mom invited them to stay for dinner. Afterward, I hung out with them for a bit in Bobby's room while they played music together. "We're heading to Nashville," Wayne told Bobby. "No more small time," Charlie said. "We're going where the action is. You should come." "I'm broke," Bobby said. Charlie sighed. "I'd spot you some money, but we're pretty broke too. Maybe you can join us when you get some cash." "Maybe," Bobby said. I could see he was tempted. As for saving up some money, that was going to be kind of tough since he still hadn't found a job. Even so, he should have gone with them. It's great if you can make a living doing something you're really good at. I told him that after they'd left. "It's just too much of a long shot," he said. "I'd love to get the band back together, but what's the point? Besides, I'm tired of wandering around." I could hear him pacing in his room all night. The paper had come out on Wednesday because of the holiday. I looked through it in homeroom even though I didn't have an article in it. That is, I thought I didn't. But there it was on page 3. A Football Feast by Scott Hudson. Hot dog references and all. They'd used boldface for the players' names and decorated the whole thing with clip art drawings of food. Oh my God. This was no time to wonder how it got printed. This was the time to get as far away from the football team as possible. I got permission to go to the nurse's office. "You're pale and sweating," she said. "No kidding." The nurse called Mom, who picked me up. I talked Mom out of taking me to the doctor. I told her I just wanted to go home and go to bed. I spent the morning imagining a million variations of my death at the hands of enraged football players. That afternoon, I called Kyle to check on things. "Did Vernon see the article?" I asked. "Yeah, he's pissed. Big time. Can you talk to him? Explain it was just a joke. No way, Kyle said. I'm not getting him mad at me. One of the guys called him Wiener Boy, and Victor decked him. A couple minutes later, the phone rang. It was Mouth. Hey, Scotty, I didn't see you in school. I heard you went home sick, so maybe you don't know about this, but remember that great article you wrote? You know, the really funny one about the snacks? Uh-huh. I made a photocopy for myself after the meeting. I kept waiting for them to run it since it was so funny, and everybody laughed when you showed it around at the meeting. But I guess you never turned it into Maddie. And then there was all this space in the paper since nothing much is going on because of midterms, and you didn't have a new article. So I had a great idea, which I guess you don't know about. Anyhow, I gave a copy to Mandy. Isn't that cool? It's too great not to share. I wish you'd seen it when it came out. It looks great. We put the player's name in bold so they could find themselves more easily. That was my idea. Don't worry. You didn't miss a thing. I saved you a copy. Mouth, I said. What? You're an idiot. He laughed. Yeah, I know. So do you want me to drop off a copy for you, or do you think you'll be back in school soon? The last time I was out, I missed 5 days. Boy, the homework piles up. You think you'll be out for long? Like I said, I can drop off a copy for you. I told him I'd get a copy. I didn't bother explaining that I'd already seen it, or that he'd doomed me. January 23rd. I might get killed tomorrow. If I don't make it home alive, you can have my books. I managed to slink around for part of the morning without running into Vernon, but I knew I couldn't avoid him forever. I stopped at my locker right before fourth period. Lee had stuck a note there in her distinct handwriting. All it said was, "You are what you eat, so what's eating you?" I guess she'd read my article. That's when Vernon caught up with me, along with 3 of his buddies. Together, they probably had about the same mass as a small car. Hudson? He asked. I nodded. At the moment, I didn't think I was capable of producing any sort of sounds that would resemble words, at least not out of my mouth. My butt felt like it was getting ready to issue a cry for help. Vernon grabbed my shirt in one fist. His knuckles looked like walnuts. You write for the school paper? As I nodded again, I could feel his fist tighten. At least it would be over soon. He'd punch the crap out of me, maybe all 90%, and in a mere 5 or 6 months, I'd be as good as new, except for a couple of scars, some false teeth, and an inability to remember my name or hold a conversation. On the bright side, I'd probably be able to sit through history class without fidgeting. He curled his other hand into a fist. Behind him, his friends pulled closer. I felt like I was getting a tour of Mount Rushmore. Hey, Scott, what's up? I looked over to my right. Everything okay? Wesley asked. Instead of waiting for me to answer, he shifted his eyes toward Vernon. I felt the grip loosen on my shirt, like Vernon had been hit by one of those blowgun darts that paralyzes all your muscles. Wesley kept staring. Vernon let go and backed up a step. I got that stripe painted on the car yesterday, Wesley said. He was still staring at Vernon, but he was talking to me. Come see. The bell rang for fourth period, but I didn't care. I was just happy that all of my organs were still inside my body where they belonged. I followed Wesley into the parking lot and admired the bright red racing stripe painted on the side of his Mustang. I'd never seen a more beautiful work of art. Very nice, I said. It's really very, straight. He nodded. Thanks, I added. Any time. I realized I'd be hanging out with Wesley for a while, at least until Vernon graduated. Vernon was a senior, but with my luck and his brains, he'd be here for 2 or 3 years. Later, when I passed him in the hall, he bumped me with his shoulder. But he just kept walking. So did I. Wesley was waiting for me after school. It actually was nice, sort of like he was looking out for me. We went cruising, which meant we drove around without any real destination. He didn't say much. Neither did I. There was a dance Friday night, but I had a game to cover first, and then I had play rehearsal. The cast had complained about missing the dance, so Mr. Pershaw said we could leave a little early. I caught the end. Right after I walked into the gym, I remembered how little fun I'd had at the last dance, and made a note to myself to skip the next dance. I didn't even have Patrick around to help pass the time. I had no idea why I went. Maybe I enjoyed seeing Julia with Vernon. Maybe I'd enjoy having my toenails slowly peeled away with a Swiss Army knife. I did enjoy a fantasy. It went like this. Julia leaves Vernon in the middle of a dance and crosses the floor, coming straight to me. We dance every dance and then walk off together, hand in hand. I spent most of the time running that scene through my mind. Kyle was there, hanging out with the wrestlers. Mouth was there, too. He got turned down by at least 7 girls in the brief time I was watching. I had to give him credit for being resilient. Nothing seemed to bother him. If I asked a girl to dance and she said no, I'd want to crawl into a hole and die.